Yeah.
All right, looks like we do have a couple of people joining us here. 8:50 was the start time for introduction to State Tech, what it is, what we do. So do you want to talk a little bit about State Tech? Not sure who out there is interested in that portion, but we just have Ryan Carb, and they all seem to be seasoned NRCS staff or partners, so sure we need to get into that right now.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about it just in general terms when I do talk about local working groups, but is there anyone new to State Tech that wants me to give kind of a more general overview? Steve, you comfortable?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. Okay.
Nothing heard. Please use the chat if you would like to hear a little bit more about State Tech before we start out the hour. Bumping 8 minutes. Is there a reminder?
Joshua, are you new? I don't think I've met you yet.
Hi, yes, I am a soil scientist here in Dover Foxcroft, Maine, with the SPSD.
Awesome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Joshua, do you know if anyone else from Triple SD will be on?
Can you repeat that?
Do you know if anyone else from SSR, sorry, not Triple SD, wrong division, SSRA will be on?
I know that my supervisor, Christopher Mann, is on, and that's all I know of.
Heck.
Hello, Chris.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Chris, do you want a few minutes on the agenda to give an update? We'll have a little bit of time.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're going to start with the State Technical Committee overview here. Give it about 5 minutes to get some folks on. So that.
All right.
Over to Becky Ross, who's State Conservationist.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good morning, everyone. Becky Ross, State Conservationist with the Natural Resources Conservation Service here in New Hampshire. A little bit about the State Technical Committee. This is a group made up of partners across the state who have an interest in conservation and the environment. And we use this group as an opportunity, one, just to share information among partners, but two, not more importantly, I think sharing information among partners is probably more important, but from an NRCS standpoint, this is an opportunity for us to hear from you all as our partners about what are some of the concerns, some of the issues that we're seeing out there, and what you are hearing from your constituents. And then we use that information to help set our priorities within our Farm Bill funding. And then for the last couple of years, also looking at opportunities of how can we mix that into our Inflation Reduction Act funds. We take all of this under advisement. Within the State Technical Committee, there is also kind of a subset that goes into the local working groups. That is something that is required by statute, and we do ask that our partners, the conservation districts, be the lead in that just because they are within our agency establishment. They were that local partner that gives NRCS that presence within the counties to go in and work. And we really look to them to gather that local information in such a manner that, one, it can also help them as they're looking at priorities, but also, two, helps us to look at, again, with input from you all as a whole, the State Tech Committee, but also the county level to gather that input to look at priorities across the state. And if we need to offer some opportunities for specialized, we call them fund codes or fund groups, allocations of our funds that we can address specific projects or concerns within a county or a watershed or on a larger basis. So looking at that, and we will get into more about local work groups later today. We have information that goes out to our conservation districts, asking them to convene them. Marcus will get into more of that detail, but we really look to this as an advisory committee. We're a small state, so always looking to see if partners have opportunities of where they're aware of some issues that maybe we're not seeing as we look at that broader statewide effort. And, a lot of our focus tends to be on agriculture on the land as well as forestry. But, we're also lately, and hopefully we'll hear from some of them today, talking a little bit more about salt marsh restoration, always thinking about the oysters and the impact that they can have, not just as a food supply, but also in helping to provide that cleaner water that, from the Great Bay that flows out into the ocean. So those are just a little bit of the background about the state committee, but we're always looking to bring new partners in. We went through our list recently. We always include some of our standard partners such as Land Trust, AES, Department of Ag, our conservation districts, our State Association of Conservation Districts, and many of our other state government partners, and then UNH, our land grant university and cooperative extension, but always looking to find those new partners that help us to give a better perspective, because agriculture and forestry all relates to food and fiber, something that I know all of us that I can see here in the room as I see some head nods, we appreciate both of those. And so just looking for ways to make sure that we can find some of those new customers out there that we can provide, whether it's technical assistance or financial assistance too. Jeremy, I hope I didn't go too long there.
You are right on the buzzer, Becky. Good job. It is now the top of the hour, so we're going to start the State Technical Committee meeting for January 15th, 2025. This public meeting is being recorded, so just be aware of that. So I'm going to hand it over to Becky here for opening remarks and introductions. Thank you.
All right, great, Jeremy. Thank you very much. And again, welcome everyone. If you caught in the middle of my update there about State Tech Committee, as Jeremy said, the meeting is being recorded, so feel free to go back and watch that portion here. So welcome. What I would like to do is, we have several people here in the room and several online. So in the interest of time, what I would ask is that for those of you that are online, if you would please just drop your name and your organization into the chat here. That way that gives us the ability to just make sure that we're capturing everyone who joins online. Couple of updates I wanted to give everyone. One that's fresh for me that I know several of us will have some interest in. Short timing, was just received notification late last night, but EPA does have a webinar that is happening today at noon. And it is focusing on PFAS or forever chemicals and talking about what they are going to be looking at in the future as far as studying that from farm products where biosolids have been applied and what some of the opportunities could be there. So I know Jeremy is going to pop that in the chat if there's a link that's interested. So apologize, it did come in late yesterday. I know I did see it in AgriPulse's news today that they're trying to get that information out there for everyone. So on the NRCS side, we're hitting this meeting in kind of an interesting week for us. This is a big week of transition. Most of our senior leaders that were politically appointed have already stepped down from their positions. So we've got several acting named up there, including Louis Aspey, who is typically our associate chief, but he is now serving as our acting chief for the agency. And then, of course, I've been reading in the news that we have a potential secretary for the U.S. Department of Agriculture already named, and hopefully we will see her confirmation hearing underway. I think it was supposed to have happened yesterday, but I believe there were some delays on that. So a lot of transition. Again, as I stated there, one other positive news, we did see the Farm Bill receive another extension. So we know that Congress will be working on that throughout the year. We've seen a lot of drafts come out between both the House and the Senate. We are excited for some of the possibilities that are in there. Looking forward to that. But one of the biggest things that we received notice on this last week was they have waived the payment limitation through this extension. cap what is the dollar amount that either a person or an entity can receive in Farm Bill funding. And as we look at going into the second year of extension, Congress waived that because they recognize that conservation needs to continue to happen. So we have seen some of the benefits of that here in the state. So we are excited for that. And Marcus, I'll try not to steal too much of your thunder if you've got any of these updates later. So happy to see that. Did just see that, we're seeing the two parties name all of their committee members to the different ones. Of course, I'm focused on the ag committee, so we did see some announcements come out there. So glad to see they're getting the committee staffed, and hopefully we'll see a farm bill come out of this sooner rather than later. Shifting here to the state, even though we've got a lot of things happening in DC, this is business as usual for us. Little different this year. Right now, we've got all of our team working to obligate about $14 million in requests from our customers for Farm Bill funding through the Inflation Reduction Act. And so we've had a lot of great opportunities. Again, not having those payment limitations, it's allowed some of our producers to come in and look at some practices that, maybe they would only be able to do once every 5 years because of limitations that they're able to get those through. But again, just working through that, we did just have our second round cutoff for applications to be considered for additional funding through our flagship program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, as well as the Conservation Stewardship Program. And Marcus, I think we also just had our second cutoff for easements, or is that coming up?
We had our second cutoff, and we've announced a third.
All right. So we've got that going. So hopefully we can get a lot of these funds obligated with our customers, both for ag land as well as forestry, so that they can start making some decisions earlier in the year, whether they need to purchase supplies and materials, obtain contractors, or obtain, we call them technical service providers, to help them write some of their management plans. But excited to get that out there. And then, hopefully with the third round announced for easements, we'll get some opportunities there, both with our partners as well as landowners as they look at their wetlands and protecting those. But again, just here, our overall focus, we continue to work with our existing customers. We attend many different outreach events. I know we've got the maple producers meeting coming up. Marcus, you and your team are attending I'm going to get the name wrong.
Oh, the New Hampshire Land Trust Coalition
Yes, thank you.
workshop.
Yeah, we've got the Land Trust Coalition workshop coming up. So continuing to try and get out there to reach new customers. We know what our base is, but we know that there's always opportunity to find more customers. And then, turning our focus to, as not only in addition to the contracting work with new customers, but also with our existing customers as we see implementation. Hopefully with this cold weather, we'll be able to see some forestry work happening in the next couple of weeks and coming months. So excited for that. And then later today, we're going to move into a little bit about the conservation innovation grants and local workers. So with that, Jeremy, I am going to stop, and I guess I'm going to turn it over to Marcus, and he's got a couple of updates.
Yes, we are well ahead of schedule. Marcus, would you like me to?
Yeah, go ahead. And if you can pop up our slides presentation, we got a few graphics to kind of cover kind of progress in the state is what we're gonna talk about with specific programs. And I'm going to actually turn it over to Gus Rock first. So we're going to start out with some updates on our regional conservation partnership program.
Yes, you ready?
Thanks, Marcus. Hello, everybody. I'm Jess Rock. I'm your RCPP coordinator here in New Hampshire. RCPP is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, for those of you that don't know. So next slide, please. So today I'm just going to cover some major updates we have in the program. Fiscal year 24 proved to be the biggest year we've seen, not just in New Hampshire, but across the country in RCPP. And we were able to double really what we have in RCPP here in New Hampshire. And so we had 2 proposals selected out of 5. And so the first one we have picked up was 3446, improving water quality, climate resilience in New Hampshire through ecosystem restoration. Connecticut River Conservancy is the lead partner on this, and I do see that Lauren Zielinski. And so this is approximately $11.5 million focused on stream bank restoration and habitat improvements in the forest. And this will include the Connecticut River Valley as well as all of Coos County for this project. These projects are very focused. Next slide, please. The other project we had picked up was 3806, expanding the application of climate smart forest management in New Hampshire and Western Maine to sustain diverse resource benefits and values. So the Nature Conservancy is the lead partner for this one, and I do see that Jeff Lugi's on from TNC for this one. And there's also several other supporting partners. For the sake of time, I don't have all of those listed, but we can get information on those as well. This one is a $10 million project for land management in New Hampshire, all counties in New Hampshire, as well as Western Maine. And then this one is really focused on climate smart forestry and utilizing the climate adaptation workbook. And so we're really excited to see these two projects get started here. And next slide, please. And so I wanted to put a plug in for our CPP. We are starting conversations for the next NFO. We don't have that NFO or notice of funding opportunity yet. It's expected to come in early spring, and we want to continue growing this program because it really is locally led conservation with our partners. And so please reach out to me. I have my email and my cell phone number here on this slide. And also late last night, headquarters released a couple info sessions that will be starting in early February for our CPP. And so if you're interested in those, please do reach out. And I believe Tracy is going to take the next slides for easements. Thank you.
That is correct. Tracy, you are up next.
Yep. Tracy Bulger, I'm part of our easement team here at New Hampshire NRCS, focusing on NV held easements as opposed to the US held easements. Next slide. That would be great. Thank you. So for ASTEP funding for New Hampshire, we received $5,726,000 total allocation this year, which really is almost double what we've received last year. So, which is really terrific. That's made up of an increase in the Wetland Reserve Easement General funding that we normally receive, and then also the ASEP IRA dollars, which are new to New Hampshire. Previous years, they were not allocated to the state. So this year, we got additional $2,068,000 specifically for ASEP IRA, which we at the state level have the ability to use either for wetland reserve easements or for agricultural land easements. In terms of applications that we received through rounds 1 and 2, we've received 10 ASEP wetland reserve easement applications, 2 ASEP agricultural land easements. Of those, 2 that we've decided we've pre-approved 2 of the wetland reserve round 1 easements using the ASEP IRA dollars. So that's terrific. And we've also, at this point, we've fully obligated 1 of the AL contracts. So we're making progress there. We are in the process of, as Marcus mentioned, we have announced a round 3 batching date, which will be February 28th, 2025. We do have some additional agricultural land easement general allocation funds still available. And even though the wetland reserve easement total applications that you see here total more than we currently have funds available, possible that not all of those we determined eligible. And so we're continuing to seek applications for both programs on a continuous basis. So if you know the projects, feel free to reach out. Next slide, please. In terms of prior year enrollments and fiscal year 25 closings, we are actively working on several projects that have obligated dollars, and I will point out that we've already closed Thank you, Brooke, for working so diligently on, we've already closed since October 1 for wetland reserve easement projects. And what you can see here is what we're anticipating for closing for all the ASAP or for all the easement programs, hopefully in 2025. Next slide. And then probably most of you know, after we've acquired these conservation easements or interest in conservation easements, we retain the responsibility of monitoring and enforcing the wetland reserve easements, which are U.S. held easements, and making sure that the land trusts who hold the easements for NRCS funded easements are submitting the monitoring reports and enforcing the easements that we provide funding for. So this slide is just a representation of what we have for total NRCS funded easements. New Hampshire NRCS is responsible for monitoring our wetland reserve easement themselves or contracting that out. We're really early in our monitoring season, and you can see we've already monitored 25% of the wetland reserve U.S. held easements. And we've already received 7% of our entity held easement, entity held partners easement reports for this fiscal year too. And we're just at the point really of reaching out to with reminders to that, reminder letters to all the land trusts to make sure they're monitoring their easements and submitting the reports to us. So I think we'll turn it over to Julisha.
Nope, I'm going to actually.
Oh, you okay?
Yeah. So I'm going to provide an update for our environmental quality incentives program and our conservation stewardship program. Our program manager, Stephanie Tidwell, she wasn't able to make it today. She had another commitment. But I'm the assistant state conservationist for programs. And next slide, Jeremy. I think you're going to look kind of what the graphic here shows is kind of similar to the other stories you've heard. We're looking at like basically double the funding or more from what we've had, especially with CSP, of what we've had in prior years. And this actually is just our Inflation Reduction Act dollars. We had our sign up that relates to our kind of classic farm bill dollars just closed on Friday, last Friday. So we'll be picking up more applications through that moving forward as well. But with EQIP IRA, we've completely we haven't obligated all these contracts yet, but over $13 million in obligations are expected from applications that have been kind of tentatively selected, and we're just in the process of finalizing contracts and getting signatures and that type of thing. CSP IRA, our demand on CSP was a little bit lower. Like our EQIP IRA, we actually went out and we were able to obtain additional funds to pick up some additional applications in that EQIP IRA fund. But CSP, we're still actively looking for applications. We don't have another funding round announced yet, but we do accept applications on a continuous basis. So if you do know of people or are spreading the word out there through various functions that you might be at, we are still actively looking for our conservation stewardship program applications. That last line on there is I don't know if probably everybody is not familiar with those acronyms, but what that is for the CPA, DIA, and SEMA is what we're talking about are forest management plans and nutrient management plans for the most part. And $400,000, it's about in line with kind of what we expended last year. So we're still putting investing a lot of money in planning in anticipation of additional contracts once we kind of have an idea of what the practice is out there on our forest projects are and our farmsteads and things. So I kind of covered that last line, but we're expecting the obligations to the actual obligated contracts for those IRA projects to be wrapped up here in this next few weeks, and then we'll really be able to focus on that classic farm bill dollars. Next slide. And so this is going to be a big pivot here. So here's me. I'm going to put on my local working group hat now. So we're going to pivot from talking about funding for this year for fiscal year 2025. And I know it may feel like a little early, but for me on the NRCS side, we're still being in the midst of working with people obligating a lot of dollars, but really with local working groups. And you could go to the next slide, Jeremy. With local working groups, we're looking to start seeking information and feedback from local kind of opportunities and local information to develop our fiscal year 2026 programs. So local working groups, just as kind of a reminder, maybe for those that are new, local working groups are subcommittees of this committee. They're generally coordinated by the conservation districts. They're made up just like this committee is, but even on a more like a local level rather than a state level. They're made up of local conservation partners, agricultural operations, and non-industrial private forest landowners. And those local working groups really serve to provide information to this committee about local conservation needs, priority resource concerns, program priorities. And then we can take that information from that group and kind of incorporate those into our programs for next year.
Marcus, before you go to the next slide, we talk a lot about resource concerns, and NRCS understands that, but would you kind of explain that to the group, what resource concerns are?
Sure. Yeah. Resource concerns, that would be like what kind of like the challenges you're facing kind of in your local areas. It might be, could be soil erosion projects, stream banks, could be water quality issues from nutrients and things being running off into surface waters or groundwater. Could be pest issues in the forest. Those are kind of examples of resource concerns or issues that a local working group might discuss and kind of bring forth. There may be like I see Kelly down there at the end of the table. There could be wildlife issues, habitat issues. They may be specific to certain regions within a county or a conservation district area. So feedback that could come to us could very well be like not only just general like resource concerns, like we're interested in wildlife and improving wildlife habitat, but maybe we're interested in improving habitat for a certain species of turtle in a certain geographic area within our area. And what we can do with that is break that into different like ranking processes and prioritize those projects for funding and for planning and things on the NRCS side of things. Let's go to the next slide. Now I'm going to talk about kind of like the general structure for this year, which will be really similar to last year's. So we're just about ready to get information out to the field offices, which will then kind of be sent out to partners, announcing kind of the opportunity to start to hold those local working groups or convene the annual local working group subcommittee meetings. We're looking at a timeline of like early May. And that the idea of that is the next state technical advisory committee meeting is scheduled for May 25th. And the idea would be we then invite those local working group subcommittees to present their findings or recommendations to the state technical advisory committee for feedback or consideration. At the same time, like traditionally, we've held our other subcommittee meetings a little bit later, like after the local working group meetings, but we're really looking to move that up as well. So for our easement partners and our forest and wildlife and agriculture kind of subcommittee partners that are on the call right now, we're going to also look to put out set some meeting dates to get those subcommittees going as well. and then also kind of invite them as well. So we have all that information then in one meeting at the state advisory committee meeting next in May, and then my staff and other staff from around the state can then take that information and start working towards incorporating that into our fiscal year 2026 program structure. And the idea then would be to present that structure and the decisions and kind of like how we incorporated that information into FY26 during our final state technical advisory committee meeting that's set for August 20th. I think this is my last slide. If we have time, I don't know if we have time for questions.
We've got plenty of time for questions.
Okay.
One question I'd levy is, so if I'm interested in connecting with my local ward, how would I go about that, or getting plugged in?
Local working group, I'd say probably the best way to do that would be to connect through your local field office, and that field office would have contact or conservation district if that would be the other. Those would be kind of two local points of contact. Would be the best way to find out about those meetings. But we'll also issue public announcements, right, for those local working groups, so that other people not familiar or kind of plugged into the current process would have the opportunity to see that and join the local working groups.
So, all right. If you have any questions out there, you can feel free to drop them in the chat. Anybody in the room have any questions for Marcus? So I can enable mics. Just let me know. Please drop the line in the chat.
So I'll ask you a question. Sure. Assuming that I'm a local work group member, what types of information is most helpful for conservation districts and NRCS to receive as feedback? Like, are things that you're specifically looking for from us, or do you just want us to provide general information and then you sort through it and use it however you want?
I mean, we've done it a variety of ways. Like in the past, we used to provide like a really specific template that requested really specific information. And the kind of the feedback we got was that it wasn't an open enough format to really get the type of information and the local kind of really like the local information that they were hoping to convene to NRCS and to the committee. So we really open that up and are kind of in a more just general framework asking for, what are your kind of like your local priorities and needs? Where are you as local partners, focusing your time and kind of looking for opportunities on NRCS's side, then to kind of help leverage kind of things that are going on or things that need attention in those areas. So, and there certainly is the freedom for local working groups to kind of develop and work others on structure. And I would say probably work with the district conservations as well.
And Ian,
And
Ian, very involved last year, and I know the conservation districts really appreciated your help. Do you have any, lessons that you learned or things that we could do to, if the communication of the process?
Yeah, thank you. We're well underway with local work group prep right now. Currently, 8 of the 10 districts have theirs scheduled. Hopefully, I'll finalize that last couple districts this week, and then Jeremy, I'll get those dates over to you for publishing. And so we're really excited about local work groups this year. One thing we've been working on over the last couple of months is adjusting the process for the local work group meeting itself so that all 10 districts are going to be using the same procedure. And so, like last year, we had various district commanders talking about what their group came up with. We had different districts using kind of different models. And so we're really hopeful that using a singular model will allow us to create statewide outcomes and recommendations from it. And so we had one meeting, the Sullivan and Cheshire meeting actually created multiple resolutions, which were able to be brought to NHACD, and then moved up the chain from there. I think 3 of them, Steve.
Yeah,
are going to national.
yeah. So there were 4 resolutions that were brought up that came out of those local working groups. What we found was that one of the resolutions was already adopted by NACD, so we dropped that one. But the other 3 resolutions were approved at the NHACD annual meeting, and then they were approved at the NACD regional meeting. So we're now going to be presenting those 3 resolutions to the NACD Resolutions Board in Salt Lake City. So that's the type of thing that can come out of these local working groups. So we're pretty excited about it. And I think Ian has undersold the work that he's done on this. So to get all 10 districts to kind of onto a uniform program for this. So we're pretty excited about it. And it's kind of a melding of Sullivan and Cheshire County meetings and what Doran learned at NACD from their meeting. So Ian has kind of melded those 2 together to kind of create this statewide process that we're pretty excited about.
I'll say that all the meetings currently are scheduled in the month of March. I know you had your timeline there. For most districts, a lot of districts are doing their plant sales in April. And so we're just getting this done in February, March. And so that will also give us a little bit more time to prep some of these statewide outcomes for the May meeting, which we're looking forward to. So we're super excited about it, and hopefully we'll have more information for Jeremy to share about details for those meetings coming soon. And I think there's a lot of excitement with districts about what we can do with this. Districts have been seeing increases in numbers each year, especially as we've moved to what we call facilitated discussion format for the meetings. A lot of the districts have been getting, up to last year, we had a lot of districts up in the 15 to 20 people attending these meetings mark. And I think people are starting to come back as they're seeing districts utilizing that information to both give feedback to NRCS and also plan their activities for the years. So speakers that they're bringing into meetings, workshops that they're putting on throughout the year, that kind of information. So I think that the local producers, landowners are starting to see some significant value from those meetings.
It does look like we have a question from Lisa Moore, and I don't want to assume that you're going to reiterate what's you put in the chat. So Lisa, you should be able to jump on the microphone now and ask a question.
Actually, it is a reiteration of what I put in the chat. So just looking to see at the local level, more reporting from NRCS on what the local work group did to impact local activities. Thank you.
I can take a stab at. I know we looked real. Oh.
I was going to put Kim on the spot. I know, you mentioned the Cheshire and Sullivan work group, and we had some really great feedback from that. And Kim, do you want to just speak a little bit about what we received from them and how we used it?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, Lisa, the overall, I guess in general, one of the outcomes from the tune-ups that happened last year with Ian helping out was just seeing how much more helpful that was for NRCS and conservation districts to have those facilitated discussions, have a process and a support to make sure that things are reported out consistently. We had a couple conservation districts that followed up and wanted to know more about, okay, well, we told you all these things, now what? So we invested a fair amount of time with Lionel and Amanda, so from Cheshire and Sullivan, because they had very specific questions. Some of the, and so I guess the take home was we helped them identify where to, I guess, put the pressure on and take additional action. So part of one of their concerns was they thought NRCS was limiting some opportunity, but was really a state permit that was holding them back. In other cases, they saw that another state was using a practice that they wanted here to exclude livestock or to exclude wildlife, but the other state was actually using it to keep deer in from an ag operation. So just bringing up some of those questions really helped us get answers that they were able to provide to their constituents. There was also a lot of feedback about easements. It's a long process, it's very complicated. And so we were able to provide them information about where they would provide that specific information, usually up through congressionals, to provide that information as the new farm bill rolls out. So I think it was a very helpful process. We got more detailed feedback than we've ever received before. And that was very helpful. And Amanda and Lionel, I think we're pretty excited to know that, okay, we heard what they said and we gave them the specific information that they needed for the next steps. And so those are the types of things that we're really hoping to be long-term outcomes from the local work group committee. And then also here, the state technical committee. We're here to hear the things that we're missing, because we're deep diving in all of our government acronyms. But there are things that you do at sea all the time that we're not seeing in the same way. So that's really why we appreciate everybody that can be here today and folks who take the time to provide feedback during the local work group meetings.
And Don, I was going to put you on the spot too, to talk about, we made some changes in the conservation practices that we offered starting this year. You want to, and that was a result of the input from the local work groups.
Oh, for sure. So many years I've worked at NRCS, I can't say that I've seen as many new things that are on our cost list now. So you think about EQIP and CSP. I mean, we've got so many different things, and the local working group has been really important in helping us think through a number of those. And so, kind of front of mind, Becky, might be some of the work the local working groups help us think about energy conservation. And that's becoming more of a thought process when we go into farms. Energy is expensive, and that might just be an example. Of course, some of the work in soil health. A lot of those changes that farmers are making are not only benefiting soil erosion in that kind of biological area, but it's also helping them save time and remain profitable. And then I think maybe thirdly, another area might be on small and beginner farmers. In New Hampshire NRCS, maybe about a third of our customers would qualify as beginners. And so beginners have kind of a unique set of challenges, but they also come with a lot of abilities to innovate more quickly sometimes due to they're just telling us, hey, let us know what the best situation is, kind of help us get there. So we have a lot of really great customers out there. And so that may be just a few, but the list goes on and on, Becky.
Thank you. All right, Marcus, sorry.
No, I'm just going to, they already said that was great from Kim and Don right there, but I'll just add on about easements and RCBP too. That easements is consistently like one of the resource concerns that local working groups has identified as like a top priority in their area. And we've certainly kind of been restructuring and staffing up and are administering a large easement program in the Northeast right now. So that push for easements is certainly like important, and we're hearing that message. And I would say like another outcome is kind of our focus on RCBP. We have an RCBP coordinator dedicated in the state now. It's a standalone position. So there very well may be local opportunities or partnerships that are going on within these local levels that may be interested in applying to RCBP. And so I think those local pushes where maybe you don't have NRCS funding, but you have a variety of partners kind of coming together and working on a project. That would I know Jess and I would be excited to hear your call, get a call or an email, and maybe talk about the potential for an RCBP proposal.
All right, Lisa, I think we got to the bottom of that question there. If you still have a comment, please let us know. We are running out of time though, but I would like to kick it over to our American Farmland Trust partner, Ryan Card, who dropped something in the chat. I just would like him to jump on to elaborate. What he's saying there. Read it right from you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just saying how one thing I've been really interested in this local working group process for a while, and something specific that I think could really help, because if the outcome is resource priorities get set, resource concern priorities get set or funding pools get set. I think having the feedback loop of when farmers are often coming like, hey, I want to do flood tables in my greenhouse, or I want to do fencing, and they don't always tie them to resource concerns. And just kind of a idealist point of view of like, if the farmers know not just to ask, hey, this is what I am, they come, we want to avoid them coming in and just asking for money, but get them to say, well, this is something that you need for, energy improvement or pest protection or protecting the water, like giving them a little bit more. I'm hopeful that local working groups can be used as a way to give them a little more inside understanding of the NRCS process as well. So that when those priorities get set, that they can really utilize them.
Excellent. Any response from in the room?
I think those are great suggestions, Ryan. Certainly we speak different languages. There's the NRCS language where resource conservation practices, and in many cases we're thinking about the same things but using the different language, and things get lost in translation. So we can certainly work with Ian and the NRCS staff that will attend those local work group meetings and make sure that we talk a little bit about the overview of the NRCS process. And if you have any thoughts and you want to sort of elaborate or maybe some specific things that would be most helpful from your experience, I'd be happy to work with you, and we can work together with Ian to make some progress.
All right, thank you, Ryan, for that. All right, we need to move on here. We have about 5 minutes left on this portion of the agenda, and that is going to probably be consumed by Dawn. I'm talking about conservation innovation grants. Use a few words, but 5 minutes is not a longer. Dawn?
All right, Jeremy, happy to consume the last 5 minutes here. All right, everybody. Hey, I'm Don Kierstead. And I'm going to give you just a really quick overview of our conservation innovation grants. CIG or SIG might be another acronym you've heard, not to be confused with the national CIG announcement on farm trials or other climate smart commodity grants that USDA has. So for the Googlers, be careful. We've got New Hampshire, right here in New Hampshire only, CIG, right? So what do we do with CIG? And Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind, I think I just have a few slides for you in the staging area. But if just to kind of frame out what CIG looks like, right? It's really a demonstration project. So we're trying to demonstrate a proven technology that's working somewhere outside of New Hampshire, right? And we could bring this to New Hampshire, show farmers, show forest landowners, others in their own backyard how this particular technology could benefit them. That's really important. These are EQIP dollars. This potential demonstration needs to have the potential, right, of becoming an EQIP practice at some point, right? So that's a really big deal with CIG. So if we would jump into the second slide, Jeremy, you'll see that I'll kind of frame out really quickly that the primary focus is not for research data monitoring. So if you're thinking, great, CIG means I can go do some research about whatever, the answer is no. We're going to try to take something out there and demonstrate it on private land farms, and hopefully in a variety of locations in the state, so farmers could try it, or folks could drive, 45 minutes to a workshop, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So next slide, please, Jeremy. Here are the state priorities. We just talked a bunch about priorities, local working groups, maybe throw these on your radar screen. In the essence of time, I won't dive into what these kind of things are, but hopefully folks maybe on this call are seeing one of these bullets and thinking, yes, I have a great idea. I know how we could maybe think about demonstrating some improvements in one of these sectors. So if that is the case, I'd love to hear from you, email, phone, whatever, or other folks in this room. Let's chat. Okay, next slide, please. CIG, let's talk money. So we've put aside, Becky has put aside $300K of EQIP dollars. So those dollars are sitting, as you've seen that we've really spent all the rest of our EQIP dollars. So we're holding on to these. And we've got to set a floor and a ceiling, right? So 150,000 is the floor, 300K is the ceiling. So what does that mean? We're going to have either 1 for 300 or 2 for 150 about. So that's kind of what we're looking to do. These projects run for about 1 to 3 years. And they require match. Oh, no. Everyone hates match. 50-50 match. So that is kind of a tough match. So let's talk a little bit about match in a second. But for those that have a NICRA or a de minimis type rate, we can use that as some of the match. So that can help. We can talk more about that. All right, next slide, please, real quick. So federal entities, sorry, Stacy, not for you, Forest Service, and during your time, really should be working on federal land. None of that. So federal stuff is out, right? Just NRCS, we're the only federal folks in the room for this. Okay, we like this to happen on private lands, ideally, but some of the stuff could happen on public lands. But if you're thinking, well, let's just use this totally for public lands, we may have to pause and talk. Okay, now, what's an NFO? NFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, right? Some slang here. That's going to go up on grants.gov. We're just getting some chatter, right, Becky, right now that headquarters are starting to get going with this and will give us the marching orders on how to post this thing out on grants.gov for 60 days. You can see I'm saying late winter, spring, that's from experience, and I'm throwing a TBD because, it's always a little bit unknown, but it will happen, right? Next slide, please. All right, quickly, what makes a great project? Again, just quickly, that there's a clear benefit to equip producers, right? And this thing's working elsewhere, right? It's a demonstrative type idea. And that the partner that's applying, or even individual, is saying, hey, I'm coming with others. I've got other organizations behind me. I've got other grants. I've got cash match, ideally, but in-kind match works great, letters of support, all that stuff, right? So you're kind of coming with a chorus of folks saying, we think this is a great idea. The proposal is well written and kind of thought out, you know what I mean? So it's don't call me, as everyone else in the grants agreements world says, the day before and, an hour before this thing is due and say, let's kind of start framing out this idea. You know what I mean? That's probably going to be a tough ride. But okay, next slide.
Hey guys, just a quick question.
Oh.
Does it have to be a brand new conservation practice or could be a different flavor scenario of a current practice?
I think it's a great way to say it, Kim. It could be a different flavor.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So let's put some sprinkles of whipped cream on something and call it a new, right?
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. The budget's reasonable, right? So we're kind of thinking like, yep, it looks reasonable on paper, right? And the team is sized adequately. And this outreach piece, I kind of talked about this earlier. This is a really important piece of CIG, right? That we are, once we kind of get this thing figured out, right? That we're able to tech transfer this. And this is oftentimes where some of the match comes from, the districts here and others, I know UNH Extension and others have done a really great job at this, right? So now we're kind of figuring this thing out. Let's show others how this thing works, right? And so typically that's why I was saying it really is helpful to have these spread around the state, because if we just say everything is down in Durham and then folks in Coos County say, well, I'm not going to drive all the way to Durham to come see this thing. You know what I mean? And plus it's, that's the banana belt and it won't work in Coos anyway. So we don't want that. Okay, and then another real key piece of this is historically underserved producer, right? So there's a definition. You can call Marcus about that definition if you have questions, right, Marcus? Sure. I'll get into that, but it would be great if this proposal in some way could identify, call it HU or historically underserved producers to participate in some way. That would be a great thumbs up for your proposal. Next slide, please. And here we go. We just said 60 days. Remember, it's not the national, et cetera, et cetera. And there's my email. And hopefully I've kind of kept this on time. Jeremy.
Yeah, not doing too bad. Pretty good. A little mini lightning round there.
Stop.
On CIG, I will ask that we pause questions. I do believe we'll have time towards the end of the meeting if you'd like to revisit that, maybe marinate on what Dawn just presented there. And at this point, I would like to move on to other USDA agency updates. Up first, I believe we have Andrea Bide from Farm Service Agency. Andrea, bring up there.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. And do you want me to share my slide, or did you have our slide in?
Sure. Yeah, you can go ahead and share.
All right. Bear with me.
Cool. Right.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, I had this shared with me. I haven't saved to my desktop, so apparently I have to save it first before I can present it.
I have it here if you'd like me to just launch it.
It says loading the file in PowerPoint Live, so I don't know how long it's going to take for it to show up, but if it's easy for you to share it, go for it, unless you can see it now. It just seems to be up. Maybe. Can you see it now? It says I'm presenting.
Good dots.
All right, let's see. How about now?
Here we go. Something's happening.
I know, slowly. Our network isn't the greatest here. There it is. All right. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Andrea Bai, and I work for the USDA Farm Service Agency and the New Hampshire State Office. And as Becky had mentioned before about political appointees, the Farm Service Agency is right in the midst of our administration changes. So you're probably familiar with seeing our former state executive director, Jeffrey Holmes, who, with the rest of the nation's state executive directors for the Farm Service Agency, were off-boarded yesterday. So until the new incoming administration identifies new state executive directors, we do have an acting state executive director, Marilyn Milne. And so we're kind of just waiting until we find out who will be our new appointees. Becky had mentioned the Farm Bill extension and what that means for the Farm Service Agency. This 1-year extension that we had been waiting on is allowing the Farm Service Agency to continue with some of what we refer to as our legacy programs. So our entitlement programs that were connected with the 2018 Farm Bill, and including but not limited to the Conservation Reserve Program, our Price Loss Coverage Program, and a big one for New Hampshire, which is the Dairy Margin Coverage Program. And tied to the passing of the Farm Bill and the last continuing resolution, Congress set $31 billion in disaster and economic assistance for farmers, which we're still waiting on details on what exactly that's going to look like, but the Farm Service Agency is expecting to be administering a lot of this funding. We are hoping to address some of the 2023 freeze losses that occurred in New Hampshire. For example, all of the stone fruits throughout the Northeast that had gotten wiped out as a result of a late freeze event. But as you all are aware in the news, there have been a lot of nationwide large disasters that have impacted farmers, whether it be hurricanes in Florida or wildfires in California, and just about everything in between. So we're kind of waiting with bated breath to see what that disaster and economic assistance programs are going to look like and how it might trickle down to New Hampshire. So more information on that forthcoming. But in the meantime, we have been really busy. So under current activities and programs, we just wrapped up an ad hoc program that was announced in December, and the deadline for applications was Friday, January 10th. This is the Marketing Assistance for Specialty Crops. Basically, any producer in the country who is growing what's considered a specialty crop, or essentially not a commodity like corn, wheat, soybeans, was eligible, and who is selling these commercially was eligible to apply for just assistance with marketing, because these are perishable products, bringing them to markets. It was announced in December, so there was a quick turnaround, and our field offices have been really busy signing farmers up for this program. A lot of people came out of the woodwork, so we had a lot of engagement with brand new producers that we had never worked with before, which is really exciting when we get to take federal funding and again, disperse that to farmers here in New Hampshire. And the goal is to make those programs this week before the new administration takes over. So our field offices are definitely working really hard to get that money out the door. We also have announced our price loss coverage and dairy margin coverage sign-up periods announced. And we have our state leadership wanted us to acknowledge that the Farm Service Agency and NRCS have continued to have successful collaboration with signups as FSA does farm records and eligibility support, and working together to communicate and streamline with our customers so that they have a positive experience, and that has been successful. And last but not least, for our investment Inflation Reduction Act funding, our farm loan team has made its final payments to distressed borrowers through our 22006 programs. And nationwide, this has helped 3,970 farmers facing pending and imminent foreclosure, and they've been brought current nationally as farm loan program borrowers. So this has been huge for the Farm Service Agency. And so those are the updates for FSA. And I will turn it back over to Jeremy.
All right, thank you so much, Andrea. We do need to jump right over to RD. They have a hard backstop at 10, so Sarah Warren should be joining us here on the line. And she is. All right.
I'm here. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for letting me join you today. And I'm going to share my screen in a minute. But like Andrea, I just want to share with all of you that I am also political. I leave on Friday instead of yesterday, and we hope for rural development for New Hampshire, that you have a great new state director who comes in under this administration sometime shortly. And we also have been really happy to work with NRCS, with your staff, with FSA, and then with this team, and particularly the conservation districts. We've had some great chances to overlap with many of you and share information about our program. So I just want to say thank you for your partnership. We've really enjoyed it, and we hope to be able to continue it going into the future. I'm going to drop a couple things in the chat. One of them is going to be our contact list website page, so that you can see who to call when I'm gone, basically. But here's a couple updates for us. Last year, we had a very small business programs team with just like 2 people because we were in a hiring freeze. We then were able to hire on about 3 new loan specialists in our business programs team. So we now have bodies who can answer your questions about VAPG, Rural Business Development Grant, and REAP. REAP in particular has been really widely used in New Hampshire, and we are so thrilled with the number of obligations and the number of projects we've been able to get over the finish line, and very aware how long it takes, and also how hard it is to sort of get the answers that we need in a timely fashion. What I want to share with all of you is that the way the Inflation Reduction Act REAP program was designed, we had a regional coordinator, and because there were new eligibility requirements, a lot of the questions that many of our constituents and customers asked us, we had to turn around and ask this regional guy, who then sometimes had to go find the answer himself. So apologies that our staff on the ground didn't always know the answer immediately, and we sometimes had to have a longer turnaround than we all would have liked. Now, many of you will have seen that we put out an announcement recently that our national office has chosen to not continue with 4 rounds of REAP in fiscal year 25. This was a strategic decision that many of us state directors were worried about, but I'll tell you why they made the choice. And we did our best to advocate for keeping those rounds open, but I'll tell you why they made the choice. There is a backlog of applications across the country that right now are full and complete applications that are eligible and could receive FY25 money. What our leadership in the national office was worried about is that if we continue to carry that backlog through this year and into the next year or the year after, those Inflation Reduction Act funds may no longer be available, and that backlog of applications may just never get funded. So what they wanted to do was to close future rounds so that they could address the backlog that we already have and try to spend all the money that we have this year on anybody who has applied but hasn't yet heard. So that's the decision that was made at the national office. That's why the rounds coming up, March and June, will not have Inflation Reduction Act funds in them, but will have Farm Bill funds in them. And then the hope is that by September, the FY26 Inflation Reduction Act and then 27 and so on will be available, and we can open it back up at the 50% grant and the higher levels for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, both. So that's a sort of not great news, but good for those of folks who are in the pipeline, and hopefully we'll be able to get fully funded in this year with the fiscal year funding that we have currently. The other big announcement I'd like to make is that there is a new program that we are launching with the partnership of the U.S. Forest Service. You may have seen recently the announcement, and I'm going to drop this also in the chat, about our timber production expansion program. It is what is called a guaranteed loan program. All right. So what we do as an agency often is to work with lenders as an intermediary to reduce the risk to the lender for an enterprise in rural America. Okay, we do a lot of loan guarantees around the country. So the eligible applicants to this program are not the beneficiary, but are the lender, and they get a loan guarantee from us, and then they are able to work directly with the borrower to be able to really feel confident about the money that they are lending to the borrower. So in this program, the goal of the program is to find loan applicants and then support the lenders. And the loan applicants are folks who want to establish, reopen, expand, or improve a sawmill or other wood processing facility that encompasses ecosystem restoration byproducts from Forest Service lands. So out west, this is primarily going to be a reduction of wildfire danger, right? But we have some Forest Service lands in New Hampshire that I want to draw your attention to. Okay, there are geographic eligibility restrictions for this. So the proposed wood processing facility itself has to be within 250 miles of one of these high priority Forest Service areas. And ideally, the supply, the woodshed supply, would be coming from Forest Service land. So you have to be able to draw a significant amount of that raw material from that federal land. The loan funds can be used, again, pretty broadly, establishing, reopening, expanding, or improving a sawmill or other wood processing facility. I'm going to also here just drop in the program page because I do have to jump in just a second. I'm so sorry. And then I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see the map. So here's the program page. Fact sheet is here. Federal Register notice is here. Frequently asked questions is here. And then what we've done, oh, hang on. Got to move this thing. Here we go. So the high priority, can you guys see this? Becky, just give me a thumbs up. You're the, okay, great. The high priority Forest Service lands are these that are in the darker orange, and the priority Forest Service lands are in the yellow. All right. So we've got significant potential in New Hampshire. And we had the chance to do a quick scan of towns that may be those eligible towns. And I'm also going to share that really quickly. That could, sorry, everybody, you're getting to see the backgrounds here. There we go. So these are the towns that are probably, if there is a sawmill or wood processing operation in these towns that's looking for capital to expand, and I will send this document to Jeremy and Becky so you could share it around. But this is a new program just getting launched. We're very excited about the collaboration with the Forest Service, and we're really excited about our wood products industry for the Northeast and being able to kind of utilize this capital in a way to get our local wood products industry kind of back on track, if possible, particularly with the potential for mass timber and cross-laminated timber products that we already see growing in New Hampshire and beyond. So that's my 2-minute spiel. I'm sorry I didn't have more time to explain it. I'll drop a few more things in the chat. And thank you all for the time. It's been an honor to work with everybody in federal service. So thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll miss you over there in RD.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Ricky.
All right, U.S. Forest Service, we are going to defer you down to the bottom of our agenda. I believe New Hampshire Timber Owners Association was unable to make it today. So at this point, to preserve time and sort of keep back on the schedule, we're going to move over to congressional delegation updates. I do realize that I still have Representative Custer on here, is now Representative Goodlander as of through January. We have not made contact with her administration yet, so we're going to skip over that one. And if I believe Paige Henderson was expected to be here from Representative Pappas's office, if you're with us, raise a hand. Or anybody from Representative Pappas's office. Oh, I see a hand here from Elizabeth McKenna. I'm enabling your mic. Now, camera. Floor is yours. Looks like you're muted still on our end.
Day one of Teams. Sorry about that. And didn't mean to cut in front of Congressman Papps's office, just raising, I thought you were going to say all congressional staff. Anyway, be brief. I think a lot of the things I was going to say have been mentioned already, but I just wanted to note a big thank you to everybody who helped get the agriculture supplemental disaster relief funding over the line. As you probably know, Senator Shaheen has been working on this for over a year, and she's gone to the Senate floor and has shared specific examples of why this is so important and it's needed. And that effort has helped bring in more senators to find support for the supplemental. So I just wanted to say a big thank you because every farm that she mentioned, all of the data that the extension helped collect, that was tangible and real, and it really helped get this over the line. So I just wanted to thank everybody who lended their story to help with that. And so as it was mentioned, $30 billion is new money for agricultural disaster relief. And we're going to work really hard to make sure that the next administration spends that money wisely so that it gets to New Hampshire farmers. And so we do want to hear from those New Hampshire farmers again about how that money would be best benefited for them. I should also add that there's also $220 million for small states and block grants. So that, that was another way that we were trying to carve out to make sure that that money definitely gets to New Hampshire and state and other small states. Also in the disaster supplemental was $14 million for spruce budworm remediation and prevention. This is something that's rapidly coming at Maine and New Hampshire. And so a lot of the money will be headed to Maine, and a good chunk of that will be headed to New Hampshire and our northern forests to prevent an infestation of spruce budworm, which looks disgusting, and so we don't want that. Not to mention just the terrible ecological impacts it has, but don't Google what it looks like. It will ruin your lunch. Becky also announced or shared information about the biosolids from the EPA, so wanted to make a plug for that too. And then my last point, I just wanted, as Ben mentioned, that state is a week of transition. And so I just wanted to give a big thank you to all of our political appointees for their federal service, but also especially our career federal employees for your service too, and for continuing to help deliver these programs to local communities. We here in New Hampshire get to see the benefit of how federal money is implemented, and it takes the manpower of state staff and regional staff to get those dollars into communities. And so we're greatly appreciate everyone's federal service, and just wanted to put a plug in for that.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for your time and great comments there. So I think we have Aaron Cotton here from Senator Hassan's office. Are you good? You good to go?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I don't want to be too repetitive with my updates, but I will just provide a brief update on what we're hearing and seeing with the upcoming reconciliation process. There seems to be some disagreement between the House and Senate Republican majority over whether to do one sweeping reconciliation bill, including all of their top priorities, energy, the border, taxes, or to do two reconciliation bills, separating out the tax provisions from the non-tax provisions. If they go the route of pursuing two bills, they would probably prioritize the non-tax provisions first, which would include, like I said, energy. So first, the Senate needs to pass a budget resolution that it will include reconciliation instructions. So at that point, we'll know whether or not we'll go with one or two bills. And then at that point, we'll also have a timeline for the for consideration. So that's really all we know about that process at the moment. I also just want to echo the thanks that Elizabeth provided in her updates. We really appreciate all of you. And thanks for having us. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. Be brief, be brilliant, and be gone, right? Then I'll do one last call for anybody from Representative Pappas' office. If you are on, the time is now. It's like, might get a little bit of time back on the agenda. Sure. Last call. All right, thank you to our congressional delegations. I know it's awfully turbulent time down there or in those positions. So at this point, we're going to move forward to up next would be Society for Protection of New Hampshire Forests. I do not see Brian Holtzman on. Is anybody from SPNF here? Matt, okay. Let me go ahead and allow your mic, camera if necessary. Matt?
Hi, can you hear me? Hi.
We can.
Good morning. I'm Matt Leahy. I'm the policy director for the Forest Society. And I think I was going to give an update on the Forest Conservation Easement Program. And this is a proposed new program for the Farm Bill that would provide funding to either land trust to purchase an easement on forest, privately owned forest land, or funding to the agency NRCS to do likewise. And the goal has been to get the authorization for this new program put in the Farm Bill, and that's still the goal. I think Becky mentioned that Congress did a one-year extension of the Farm Bill towards the end of 2024. The authorization for FSEP was not part of that, although that was not a surprise. That would have been very unlikely for Congress to do that in an extension. So the goal is still the same when Congress does take up work on the new next Farm Bill this year, hopefully. The goal is to get FSEP included in the next Farm Bill. It has very broad support nationally. There's a whole national network of organizations, including the Forest Society and some others here in New Hampshire, but also across the country, that are working, with Congress to do this. New Hampshire's congressional delegation has been very supportive of this proposal. And, I know, speaking for the Forest Society, we will continue to engage with our delegation as Congress does start to ramp up efforts to pass the next Farm Bill. And I don't know. If people have any questions, obviously I'll try to answer them, but that's kind of where we are right now on this proposal.
All right. Thank you for the update. Are there any questions within the room?
Matt, I'll toss you a quick question, Becky. In the past, we've had the Healthy Forest Reserve Program authorized through the Farm Bill.
Yeah.
How do you see this new program being different from that program?
Well, I can't give you all the specifics, but in general, FSEP would replace the Healthy Forest program.
Would there still be the I don't know if requirement is the right word, but for Kelly, was it T&E species or just endangered?
Threatened or endangered species, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service involvement, I think, with healthy forests.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question, Becky. I don't know if that's. I have not heard that in all the discussions I've had on this. I mean, there will be a requirement for a landowner to have a forest management plan of some kind in place. I don't know about the T&E issue, though. However.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot for that.
That's a good question. But like I said, that point has not been raised in any of the discussions that I have had. I can certainly try to find out, though.
I know Congress has got their work cut out for them to get through the reconciliation process and bring both sides together. So we're excited to hear this program is still in there.
Yes.
So
I mean, like I said, last year, I think both the House version and the Senate version did have some provision in their versions for FSEP, not necessarily exactly the same, but pretty close. So I know in talking to some of our partner groups elsewhere, I think we're all pretty upbeat that when Congress does finalize the next farm bill, FSEP will be part of that.
Standing. That's great news for
forest extinction.
Yes, very much so. Absolutely.
All right, Matt, anything final? If you're in the audience out there, you want to raise your hand, we can drop a question in the chat real quick. Give it about a minute here. Seeing and hearing nothing, no movement at all. We'll take this opportunity to get 10 minutes ahead of schedule. All right. Well,
thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
All right. At this point, Jeremy Delisle should be joining, or should be able to join us here for a update on the Network for Environmental and Weather Applications. Jeremy, are you with us? I was expecting to be here at 10:25, so it might be else. All right, there we go. All right, I've allowed your mic, camera. It's coming at attention too. All right, go for it.
All right, thank you very much. If I could just have access to share my screen, that would be great.
Now you're asking a lot. I thought I invited you as a presenter, and it doesn't really seem like it's that ability. You email that to me?
Yes. I have not emailed it yet, Jeremy, but I can send that now.
Yeah, I don't see the option to allow you to that here.
All right.
There we go.
Well,
all right.
You got it?
Give it a try now.
Okay. Great. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Says PowerPoint Live. Preparing my slides. It should be coming right along.
You got it.
Okay. And then do you see it as presentation mode?
Nope.
See, I'm not quite sure how to switch modes. If anybody knows.
I think you're good.
Yeah,
I think you're good.
Oh, you're good. Okay, great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. Also, I wanted to say thank you to Elizabeth and others for the comments on the crop loss relief effort. Extension really appreciates those comments and that recognition, the opportunity to serve. So thank you very much. Today, I was invited here. Dawn asked me to come and talk a little bit about our NUA network in New Hampshire and what that is and how it's grown over the years. So we just recently completed a survey with our growers asking them how they're utilizing this network, and I'll explain what that is exactly. So basically, the NUA network, if you're not familiar with it, is this set of predictive models and data that is collected through on-farm weather stations based throughout New Hampshire, New England, really the whole East Coast. And New Hampshire has been very active within the NUA network and has received a lot of support from NRCS to get these stations on the ground. And so one of the things that we wanted to learn was how much adoption has there been and kind of what difference is it making to growers. So we conducted a survey recently, and we are working on getting all the results together to share. So what we learned was really positive. About 92% of our respondents, and we had a roughly 36 or so respondents to our survey, growers representing, large acreages in some cases. And so when we think about those numbers, I like to think about acreages represented by them. They are using this to help guide pest and disease management decisions, horticultural management decisions. And we defined pest as insects, diseases, or even potentially animals, even though NUA doesn't really specifically address animals within their models. So we asked them, how they use this information to act on management needs. And these are some of the things that we learned. Helps them time pest controls more effectively. We help determine if pest control is even necessary, which really is at one of the fundamental tenets of integrated pest management. We save money due to reduced control measures, and we improve marketable yield. And so these are all things that to us are gold. They're the things that we strive for with kind of some of these longer term impacts resulting from adoption. Some of the other things that we shared was that customers really like learning that they're monitoring what's going on the farm and they're making decisions based on that. They used data to go back and diagnose why problems occurred so that they can make adjustments to their management in the future, and helps them decide, when pest problems may even be an issue or when they should start looking, and saves them time in collecting all of this information from one single location. So we asked how many of them actually had a weather station of their own, and it looks like right at 50% did. And that has been one of the goals since actually Don mentioned CIG. We had a CIG project a few years back, and one of the components of that project was to expand the weather station network in New Hampshire. And so the idea has been more stations creates more data and better resolution of that data. And so that has been the goal, and NRCS has really helped us expand that network. We're at just over 40 on-farm weather stations in the state of New Hampshire, I should say. So we also asked, what support can UNH Extension provide as they continue to utilize their weather stations, keep this network viable for years to come. And they want to continue to have education about how to interpret and act upon the models. We do that regularly through written reports that are published and available to growers. Work with partners like NRCS to ensure that funding remains available to grow the network and replace stations as they kind of age out over time. They tend to last roughly a decade before they kind of become more trouble than they're worth to keep. Continue to provide maintenance recommendations and troubleshooting support, which we do, and I serve as the NUA coordinator for New Hampshire in that role. So of those who didn't have a weather station, 83% indicated they were aware that NRCS can provide support to purchase and install a station. So that's pretty good. A lot of folks are aware of that. I think a lot of folks on this call have probably helped publicize that as an option. Most respondents indicated additional training would be helpful to learn how to use the models and interpret them to make management decisions. So that's something that we'll continue to do through our programming. Other things, this was interesting. This is from an educational perspective, but probably applies to many on this call. How do they prefer to receive that education? They like the idea of online webinars, online mini tutorials, even during the lunchtime hour, regular meetings for half an hour on Zoom or Teams, and of course, in-person workshops. So we asked, where did they make changes? This is what we always want to see, positive change. Again, so we saw improved timing of control measures, more informed decision-making, improved efficacy of control measures, and adoption of new practices. Other things they mentioned, they knew it to track rainfall, these temperature swings, fire blight management as a bacterial disease in apples, and a lot of comments related to fire blight management, and allows them to better use their time to focus on important tasks on the farm. This is all basically saying Extension aims to drive positive change. And we wanted to look at how this helped with their decision-making ability and how they gain knowledge related to management practices through NUA. So some of the changes that were made related to sustainability practices in particular were things like better timing for insect control, fire blight again came up, decision-making. One of the things that popped up is they would like to see additional models added to the network. So things like blueberry, grape, strawberry diseases and insects, then I think there will be room to grow this network going forward. Other changes that they made, again, had to do with decision-making, more accurate treatment plans, better timing of something like streptomycin, which is commonly used. And this comment in particular helps us get at reducing any resistance to certain materials that are critical for management of some diseases in these production systems. So, some of these comments I thought were great. We now use NUA to assist in timing and controls of all major pests and pathogens, which models are available. So full adoption of that system to the extent that they can use it. So we asked them about barriers to adopting, installing a weather station and utilizing NUA on their farm. Time, money, reliability of the stations. There are always little quirks with the stations that we need to address. Some mentioned some of the software can be, a challenge just to kind of master, cumbersome to get the information that you want. We did hear comments about NRCS, a couple deferring their application. So I'm sure there are good reasons for that. I just wanted the folks on the call to know that this was reported, and I'm happy to talk more about how to best prepare growers to be successful if Extension can help in any way. We asked them what they would like to see added to the NUA network as far as models for additional pests. And so we got some good information there that you can see here. Sunburn risk, certainly one of those things that ties to climate and the temperatures that we're seeing. And then, so other educational efforts that would be helpful to navigate the growing system. What do they like? How do they like to receive this information, which may be valuable to others? We write weekly reports and publish them. We email them. We text them to growers. We have a texting service that we utilize. Our twilight meetings, in-person meetings, our annual meetings, and then a host of various online options. And I'm getting close to the end here. Ideas for new in-season educational efforts. This is where they really like this idea of short presentations, speed dating, quick sessions to report throughout the season. These brief check-in meetings throughout the lunch hour, where we can have conversations between growers and ag service providers, field specialists, and the roundtables were kind of a follow-up on that. And this one I think I'll skip. So and that brings me to the end. So that's the end of what I have to share with you. I'm not quite sure how I stopped sharing. Jeremy, maybe you can just pull out the hook and pull me off.
The shepherd's hook, right? All right, I think I got it done there. From one Jeremy to another, thank you. That was an awesome presentation. I think we all very thrilled with that. Becky,
thanks for having me. And just want to say thanks for having me. And thanks for all the support.
Yeah, Jeremy, and thank you to you. I know that you've been a huge supporter of us as we reach some of those new customers and working with existing customers. So thank you for sharing that information. I thought it was a great amount of information and look forward to that continued partnership and addressing our pest problems.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Becky.
All right, Jeremy, thank you so much. Up next, we have U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with an update on the monarch butterfly listing. That leads Audrey Mayer. And
Hi,
I have
thanks, Jeremy.
for you here. Just give me a second.
Okay. So I'll just tell you when to go to the next slide. And I only have 3. So
I just need to share it now. Sublet permits. All right, go ahead. Take it away.
thanks. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to just quickly run through where we are with the monarch butterfly listing. So as a lot of you already know, that proposed listing as threatened went out December 12th of late last year. We're proposing to list it as threatened, and we published a proposed 4D rule at the same time. That's focused on the primary threats. I'm going to have more to say about that 4D rule in a minute. The only proposed critical habitat is out in California, and we don't anticipate any around here in the Northeast. Public comment period on both the proposed rule to list and the 4D closes March 12th, 2025. There may or may not be an extension. It sort of depends how many comments we get. We are specifically seeking comments on the 4D rule related to things like time of year restrictions or spatial restrictions, pesticide usage, and incidental take by transportation and energy sectors such as wind. That is spelled out if you go to the Federal Register article, those bullet points of what we're looking for. I've put 2 websites here. So this first one is just the Monarch generally, that has a ton of resources, not just about the listing and the 4D rule. I have another address website a little bit later that goes into that 4D rule with a lot of questions and answers. Next slide. So the 4D rule, it would prohibit take unless otherwise allowed within these exceptions. So these are the ones that I think would be of most concern to the audience here. Activities that maintain, enhance, remove, or establish milkweed and nectar plants that do not result in the permanent conversion of habitat to non-habitat. So what we're saying is mowing a hedgerow that will grow back to the hedgerow is not a permanent conversion, but taking a hedgerow and putting it into a driveway, that's permanent conversion. Maintaining or improving monarch overwintering habitat. We don't have any in New Hampshire, so that's for other parts of the country. Implementation of state or federal conservation plans, vehicle strikes, and then items related to the collection, sale, and scientific research of monarchs. So each of these have a limit to up to 250 individuals. So whether it's non-lethal collection, captive rearing and release, non-lethal scientific research and education opportunities, the possession of dead monarchs, or the sale of captive reared monarchs. Next slide. So the highlights, right now the species is not listed, it's proposed listed, and therefore protections are limited. Monarch does come up on IPAC already, but there are no specific things that people would have to do at this time for it. There is the opportunity for conference, and I think there's been some discussions with Department of Defense and also NRCS as related to the CRP program. This is only required between our agency and other federal agencies if the action is likely to jeopardize the species. And consultation in advance of final listing can be prudent, but it's not always necessary. So as I said, NRCS way up in headquarters is already working with us related to CRP.
whether a conference is needed for other NRCS programs or actions. That's really going to be probably generated at the headquarters level. Again, there's no critical habitat proposed outside of California. We anticipate eliciting a final rule in late 2025. Again, that depends if there are some extensions to the public comment period. If you have any questions, you can contact my office at New England at fws.gov, or if you have a project point of contact in my office, you can contact them directly. And again, this is that FAQ or question and answers website, particularly about the 40 rule, that provides some more explanation for what 40 rules are and how they operate. So I hope I have time for questions. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
All right, at this time, if you do have a question, you can drop it in the chat or raise your hand. Any questions from within the room?
Got a question?
Kelly?
Yeah. So in these comments and the period of time before the final listing or final rule, are there still things we can be doing as agencies? Like, we have our New England Pollinator Partnership going on, and are they considering those kinds of activities, the on the ground habitat improvements within that?
Yeah, so that I don't know. And that's something that would be excellent for a public comment. And when I say public comment, it can be the public, can be other agencies, either state or federal. It doesn't necessarily have to be individuals. And in fact, Fish and Wildlife Service, our field offices can submit public comments, as weird as that may be. So that would be a great thing to ask. The monarch listing, the main team is in the Midwest, and so they may not be aware or very knowledgeable of the New England or the Northeast Pollinator Partnership and other efforts. So submitting that as a public comment and saying, here are the activities that we have, can these be considered under 40 rule exemptions would be a really good way to address that. Otherwise, you can contact someone in my office and they might have a little more information, but I'm not sure, particularly if it's using pesticides in any way. As I said, none of those have been addressed so far in the proposed 40 rule, and that's where we anticipate having to do a lot of work in response to public comments.
Oh, no. All right, out there, for our remote viewers, if you do have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand. We'll give it about a minute to start before we move on. You're nothing. Oh, Don has a question.
Hey, Audrey, it's Don. Hey, thanks for this presentation. Curious about kind of the land uses and planning environments. You alluded to earlier, hedgerows and old field type habitat where milkweeds and nectar plants are. But think about it with a forested state. Are we talking at all about the forest in monarchs? Is that a potential conflict?
I'm not sure if it's conflict. And again, if it's forest and you're cutting and it's still going to be forest, that's exempted. So it would be if you're cutting a forest to convert it to a residential area, or a shopping mall or something. So there is recognition. And part of this is also, we've got prescribed burning, we've got thinning. We're going to have to do some forest management based on invasive species. So this is really meant to address permanent habitat loss, not the conversion of one native habitat type to another native habitat type, which monarchs, they do. They use forests, they use grasslands, they use meadows. So that's not what we're after right now is forests where we're doing thinning or prescribed burning, where we're expecting it to return to forest or return to shrubland or, some other native or natural habitat type.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. In the absence of any raised hands or questions in the comments, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And
thank you.
All right. As I said earlier, the New Hampshire Timberland Owners Association does not appear to be able to join us. So this point, boy, we spent a lot of time in the forest, and we're going to continue with Stacy Lemieux from U.S. Forest Service.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And he has a set of slides. Dr. Becky, I'm not even sure. I don't remember who asked my forest supervisor to come, but he's unavailable at the state. So I'm here to talk a little bit about what's going on the White Mountain National Forest. And then hopefully if I have time, since we made up a little extra time, be able to talk about a cool project we have going. So if you can go to the next slide, you'll see the list of topics that I'm going to go through fairly quickly with updates and then talk about the project. So next is talking about staffing. We still have our chief. So when we're talking about natural changes in the Forest Service, that's not actually uncommon. They often make it into, if not through, administration changes. I would bet at least a little ways into. But we do on the forest have a new deputy forest supervisor. So forest soup and deputy are our top leadership positions on the forest. Alyssa just started last week. So she's just barely getting her feet on the ground, comes to us from our Washington office, has a strong background in fuels and fire and in forestry and silviculture, as well as a breadth of areas across the Western U.S. So she's excited to be in the East. That should be a good addition. For us, more broadly, hiring, we did a lot of it in 22 and 23 and very early in 24, got on some great people, some new younger folks, and filled in some new positions. Unfortunately, then people start seeing that bill's going to end, IRA is going to end, potential, which resulted in administration change. So hiring came to a screeching halt. And is now expected to be very limited for the foreseeable future. So we do have a number of vacancies and upcoming retirements and departures that are going to leave us short-staffed. So please bear with us as we figure out how to do business differently and what we're not going to do. But we'll keep on chugging. So next is talking about our strategic plan, which I mentioned a few years ago when it first came out. But it's a 5-year strategic plan that we're about 3.5 years into. And our priorities we put into these 4 goal areas. Forest resources, we probably should have actually named natural resources because it includes invasives, wildland and prescribed fire, water improvement, habitat improvement, as well as timber harvest. So all of that in there, trying to just continue moving our efforts forward and incorporating climate change. Infrastructure, what do we have? Where is it? And what do we need to do to make it more sustainable and affordable? Managing use and experience are the same thing, but on the people side. What do we have? Who's there? What do they want from the forest? And then how do we balance that with protecting resources? And, a lot of that is focused on our alpine areas. And then also right now on things like snowmobile trails and how do you keep a snowmobile trail given climate change and given the cost of bridges and things like that. And then with workforce, a lot of that emphasis up till now has been about recruitment and onboarding new staff. And well, now we're making a bit of a switch and it's much more focused on just how do we be that workplace of choice and how do we get those new folks trained and really incorporated and ready to take over for those of us who will be retiring in coming years. So next takes us to the joys of being a federal agency. We have, if you haven't heard, been sued by standing trees for 2 of our projects, 1 lawsuit, thankfully. It is with the courts. We hope sometime in 2025 to hear the results and what the judge thinks, and we'll figure out what that means for us from there. Hopefully it'll be like the last time where they agree with us and we keep moving. But right now, that is what we're doing. Important projects are ongoing. We have one of those projects has a timber sale that just started up in the last couple of weeks. So no injunction. We'll just keep plugging until somebody tells us otherwise. But the best thing that's come out of this effort for us is there's been a huge support from the natural resource community across the state for our management. There's a number of folks, both the state and a number of environmental groups that filed an amicus brief for us, and then op-eds and just other ways of
getting that word out to the public that there is support for thoughtful, active management on the ground. So thank you to everybody who's been part of that. Next. Like everybody else, and like Toa was going to speak to, invasives are a big deal on the forest. For us, ash borer's been there for a couple of years now, so we're working hard to respond to that in different ways. Beech leaf disease, unfortunately, was discovered on the forest last year. So we figure in the next years, it'll start taking out our understory, and then the next decade, I don't know what the white mountain's going to look like without beech on it. So that's going to be an interesting shift for us to figure out what does that mean we need to do differerly in our silviculture and management. And then we'll see what's going to come next, because there's going to be something. Next is the other topic that seems to be affecting everybody in New England, flood event response. For us, just the December 23 storm saw 34 of our roads impacted, including a number of bridges, 22 trails and campgrounds and day use areas. So, for one storm, that's quite a bit. Of course, there was also 09, 11, 17, 18, 19. Who knows when the next one will be, but we're, of course, like everybody else, reacting when we need to. But a lot of our time and that strategic plan effort I was talking about is on how can we be more strategic? Where do we really need infrastructure? Where do we really need to focus that money? Where could we dial it back or change how we're doing things? What the heck is a 100-year flood event these days? And how do you plan your infrastructure, bridges, and culverts for that as it changes? So we have a good team that's been working on creating a process for assessing flood and going out and looking at our areas, and not just looking at specific sites near that road or infrastructure, but taking a more holistic look at a watershed and being able to say, okay, well, what are those causes of the damage that comes? What are those factors that are influencing it? And doing that led us to the next slide, which is one of a really cool project that we've been working on the last couple of years. That team, when they were looking at this, they started with 3 areas, one on each district. The one on the Penby was the Zealand River Road, which first flooded out in Irene and has ever since. This is actually one of the better looking problem areas. The other ones are all armored because it keeps taking out the road. And unfortunately, the Bethlehem town water line has been exposed in a number of spots. So kind of important, and just moving either the road or the pipeline weren't really reasonable. So we started looking at, well, what's going on here and what are our options? And that took us to the next slide, which was understanding what's going on, what has gone on in the Zealand watershed. Well, funniest thing, floods are not new. But 60 years ago, the response was very different. The very cutting edge response at that time was to create these monster gabion walls. And it's pretty impressive. They were 4 foot wide by 4 foot tall rock gabions that they stacked 2 to 3 tall. So they ended up being 8 to 12 feet tall and 4 to 8 feet deep. And they lined the river with them in pretty significant stretches. It was super effective at protecting the road. Unfortunately, it was also super effective at incising the river so that, it just funneled all that energy straight down. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see all those yellow stripes are where they put the gabions. And the one on the bottom right was really telling because they put it on both sides. So that river had absolutely no place to go. But if you look just above that, you see this huge floodplain. So this is what our group looked at. They pulled out their LiDAR and they went, oh, holy cow. We can't see that from the road and the side that we're always on, or the road even on the other side. And they started going out in the field and looking at it. And if you look closely, you can almost see, and it really is the old floodplain, the main channel. That used to be the Zealand River at some point in time before floods shifted it and then they channeled it. So they started looking at, well, what can we do differently when it happens? How can we put it back in the floodplain? Maybe there's an opportunity here. Of course, incised river, floodplain,
how do you get the water from down here up into the floodplain? Well, the answer is the next slide. You open up one of those old channels. And it took heavy machinery in a floodplain in the river, took a lot of talking to the state, the Corps, a lot of people who have good knowledge in addition to our own staff, and having a construction and maintenance crew on staff that we can work with ourselves. So not a contract where you have to tell them everything you want to do and how you want it done, but our hydrologists, our fish biologists, and our equipment operators out there for months on end, deciding what to do day to day. But they opened up this, the one on the right is the historic New Zealand River channel. What you see going on the left is where it has been for the last 60 years. They opened up that main channel and some side channels for overflow in the case of floods in the future. And then if you go to the next slide, they then took apart those gabions. Scotty, if you're going to give me something really solid, let's work with it, and managed to actually drag that across the river whole and use it to create a berm across the existing channel that you see on the lower end there. And they took those trees, took the root wad and a long log, pile drive that in behind it, created one of the most solid river banks now that I've ever seen that blocked off where the river used to be going, forced it to stay in the historic channel. Now the new channel, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that it worked really well. We have a floodplain florist back. That center one that has, if you were to look at it close, the water is a little brown. That's day one. Like they had just opened up that channel. And then the other ones are just, what happens as the river goes through. The intent had always been, and the hope had been that the water would make it all the way through that floodplain to an old beaver flowage. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we were successful within a day or two of when they put the water in. That's where that left-hand photo was. The beaver were active. They had come out of their beaver flowage area, started using those new historic channels, and really taking over that floodplain. So we're excited to see in the coming years what that area looks like. And the good news is, like I said, it made it all the way out to that beaver flowage, which then feeds back into the Zealand River right next to the road, but at a much lower velocity, much less intensity of flow, even in floods, we hope and expect. So we can have the river right back where the people are used to hanging out on the sandbars and seeing it near the trailhead, but without the risk to the road and the tower water line. So there are very many opportunities to do something really cool like this. I got many sites where the water and the road are right next to, and all we have to do is open a floodplain, but it's a pretty cool project that we implemented, and then we're continuing to look at what are the other ways that we can do. Each site is different that we look at because each cause is different and what's around it, but we're pretty excited to figure out where we can go next.
Excellent. Looks like we do have a question from Steve Landry online. Are there any concerns about the old wire mesh becoming exposed, broken off, and a hazard for human or wildlife?
Certainly. Not in the area that we moved and are using in the berm, because they buried that sucker with logs and rocks and everything else. You can't tell that the old gabion is in there, but those gabions are coming apart unquestionably. And we have had a couple of cleanup efforts in the river to try and pull some of that wire mesh out of the river. It's just going to be an ongoing challenge, and there's certainly risks there associated with it. It's also just so much of it that trying to actively remove it all is beyond our capabilities.
Some contact information for Stacy. I'm going to stop the slideshow, but give it a couple seconds just so people can jot that down if they need to. And if you have any questions out there, please feel free to raise your hand or submit them in the chat. Are there any questions in the room while we wait?
You're saying, Stacy, where are we going on a field trip?
Right? Yeah. Well, because it's a whole lot more fun to walk through in the summer. And our fish biologist, Mark Prout, who's
one of the main driving forces behind this just retired and is now in Florida for the winter. Smart man. So he'll be back in May, and he's amazing to hear him talk about the history of this area and what they did there. He's a fabulous storyteller for it. So, and he loves going out and showing it off. So by all means, we would love to have folks come out and look at it.
Maybe that's something that we could coordinate for our August meeting, maybe the morning or, half of the day in with some of our presentations and information sharing.
Yeah.
And then another part of the day actually out there on site talking about one of these great projects.
That'd be great.
Love that.
We can host the meeting if you want to be closer. So
Would love that. Great.
that's great.
All right, I see no questions online or in the chat.
I had one quick question for you, Stacy. Sarah mentioned a little bit about we make sure the timber production and expansion guaranteed loan program. What are you hearing on your side from the federal forest?
Interestingly, I only heard about it a couple of days ago myself.
Okay.
And so just the fact that it is out, that this is out there and available. We've been trying to make our purchasers and the farther down that pipeline aware of it, because they obviously meet it's coming off the national forest requirement. It is, it is with the national forest. And if you read the language, it does say national forest. Obviously that map was not all national forest. It is federal. So it includes like Silvio Conti Refuge and Magog and some things like that. So, but yeah, it's a big push is to support our pipeline, which would be, hopefully the end result will be, more markets for that low value wood, because
that's something we could use.
Yeah, sure could.
So, Jeremy, I know we're running up against the end of the meeting, but I did want to, earlier in the conversation, Jess Ruck, our Regional Conservation Partnership Program coordinator, mentioned TNC and Connecticut River Conservancy as recipients of the project. So I wanted to see if either Lauren or Jeff were still online, and if you all would like to take this opportunity just to plug your project that we're excited to see kick off a little bit more than what Jess did.
All right, Lauren, hold on a second. I'll enable your. All right, Lauren, take it away.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me.
Lauren, we accidentally muted you.
Yeah.
Muted me. A huge thank you to everyone at the state office. I know we've had multiple conversations leading up to the proposal and submission, and then Jess Rock has literally been a rock star. She's been fighting for us for all the weird ideas that we had. Can we do that? What if we change this? Can we adjust this? Where I feel like we're pushing the boundaries of RCPP, and every time she came back and she made it happen. So kudos to her. But for us, for our project, we are focused in the Connecticut River watershed in New Hampshire, plus Coos County. I know we've been talking with Kelly Eggleston, and she said it's sometimes just hard to find capacity for people that know how to do stream projects up there. And so the state office have been such good partners to us, and so we'd like to reciprocate. So we're happy to include that service area in our project. But kind of the short story of our project is kind of split in half. We're going to be working on stream restoration projects, so biostabilization or bank stabilization projects, AOP, aquatic organism passage, dam removals, culvert replacements or removals, kind of big yellow machines in the rivers, helping our private landowners kind of maintain their properties and their farms, and then kind of improve the water quality at the same time and climate resiliency. So we have a couple potential projects in the pipeline, and not only are we helping save these properties, but we're hopefully able to provide some additional floodplain restoration and in-stream fish habitat improvements. So we're excited about that. And then the other half, we're working on forest stand improvements and kind of headwater stream
habitat restoration, so strategic wood additions, wood turtle habitat improvements, kind of anything that happens in the forests, kind of in those smaller scale streams. We're kind of working with some partners to make that happen. So we have a bunch of large landowners on board with us. They're very open to new ideas like beaver dam analogs, and again, kind of pushing the envelopes with some new practices. So Jess and I were still working hard at getting all those contracts finalized. So getting down to the wire here, but that's what we'll be working on for the next 5 years. And we're very excited to be working with all of you.
Great, Lauren. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit more about the project. And yes, I know it's been quite the road to get to here, but hopefully we will see that open up and get some of these projects underway. Jeff.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and you can hear me too. Yeah, so I would like to echo Lauren and give a big shout out to Jess. She has been fantastic to work with and has been doing a ton of work to help us get this project across the finish line. Hopefully in the near future here, we're going to sign our supplemental agreement and have the money obligated and be ready to kind of start moving the project forward. I also just want to mention Jess alluded to that we have some key partners that are involved in this, and I just want to mention who that partner group is. So we have the Forest Society, New Hampshire Audubon, the Greater Lovell Land Trust in Western Maine, who's really going to be kind of taking the lead on the project in that landscape. UNH Co-op Extension, Steve Roberge, I think I saw his name here. He was at the table today at this meeting. The Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, who has this tool that they've developed called the Adaptation Workbook that can help landowners to identify climate-smart forest management practices. And then the University of Vermont, who is really kind of our science and monitoring lead on this. And this is the forestry program, Tony D'Amato. I know that many of you are familiar with him and his work. What we're doing with this project is building on an initiative that we've been working on the last couple of years that we've just called the Climate Resilient Forest Management Project. It was funded through NIFWIF and the Wildlife Conservation Society. We set up 2 landscape networks in the state. One was in the Mount Washington Valley and another in southwest New Hampshire. And really, we were just bringing people together to have conversations about, climate impacts that they were anticipating impacting their forests, and then kind of tooling people up with the adaptation workbook to help them think about their objectives, how they might want to modify those, and sort of identify strategies going forward. So really what we want to do is through that project, we have some shovel-ready projects that we think we're going to be able to enroll in financial assistance kind of in the first couple of years of the project. And then we want to expand that model across the state and to some other landscapes. And we're generally thinking about like the coastal watershed, continuing to build out the one we have in southwest New Hampshire and the Mount Washington Valley. We have another one that we envision kind of in the upper Connecticut River Valley around the Muskoma watershed, and then the North Country, Coos County. So a little overlap with the Connecticut River Conservancy Project, and I'm sure Lauren and I will be chatting about that. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of it. The focus really has been just trying to get the funds obligated. And again, thanks so much to Jess for the help on that, and more to come.
All right, great, Jeff. Thank you for popping on and giving a little bit more about your project. So Jeremy, we're coming to the end of our meeting here today. I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended either online or here in our Dover conference room with us. Thank you to all of our partners who gave presentations today. Super informative. I know I've got a page full of notes here. As always, thank you to our congressional delegation representatives who were on to share, what our representation is doing in Washington, D.C. for us up here in the Granite State. And then, our next meeting, Jeremy, I think we are set for May 21st, 2025. We've got a lot of presentations from our local work groups that'll happen then. We will work to make this next meeting set up in a more central location to allow people that do want to travel in, that we can find that central location, and then as well continuing to offer that online option as well. So if we don't have any other questions, I just want to say thank you all again and appreciate your time today. And to all of our presenters, both virtually and here in person, I really appreciate the updates. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. And hopefully we'll see some snow with this next round of cold weather coming in. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.